Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Our Town series here on the Wave Channel 5 as we are in conjunction with Main Street Greenville as we continue to take a look at the businesses and stores that make up the downtown area of Greenville, Ohio. I'm Alex Warner. Videographer Nick Schmitz accompanied me here on West 3rd Street as today we're going to talk to Jesse Berry, and he's the owner of Young Forest Martial Arts. And Jesse, let's talk just a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm from Greenville. Well, I grew up in Greenville. I'm actually from another state. And I got into martial arts shortly after high school.
You said you graduated what year?
95.
Okay.
And then I worked a couple of various jobs. I did a little bit of college at Edison State, trying to really find what I was interested in. And then I stumbled across martial arts looking for an activity for my youngest daughter. And of course, I'm really into history and philosophy and things like that. So, and those are some of the things I was exploring at Edison. When I stumbled onto martial arts, it seemed to have a very rich history, a very rich philosophy, and of course, it was very physical. I've always been kind of a physical person, so I've kind of been with it ever since.
Had you been taking martial arts classes, or you just, when you found something for your daughter to do, that's when you really got interested in it?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in martial arts. As I said, I've always kind of been physical and, competitive. So, none of that stuff was around here when I was growing up that I remember. I actually found a school in Eaton, Ohio for my daughter, and then watching the instructor with the children and talking to some of the other members of the school, like in the waiting room, it just really seemed very intriguing and interesting. So,
well, how long have you been in this then, and then how long have you been here at the present site?
I've been training martial arts for 10 years now, 12 years now, and then I opened this school in August of 13, so not quite 2 years.
How'd you happen to pick this particular spot? Because you're tied in also next door with Elements, if I'm not mistaken, the yoga studio and so forth, or not?
We're not officially affiliated in any way. I mean, this is my business. That's their business. I've been friends with Emily since high school, and she had approached me about doing a self-defense seminar or course, which I did for her, and then just in general conversation, she had asked why I don't do something like this full time. I told her I was actually at that time, and this is about 3 years ago now, I told her I was really, I had reached that point where I could open my own school from my headquarters school. I had been assistant instructing there for 8 years. I had reached that point in my training where I could take on my own students. So I told her I was kind of starting to think about a school, and she said, why don't you rent the space next door? And it just kind of one of those things where just kind of a conversation went from one thing to the other. And here we are. Yeah, downtown. It's a perfect space. I think martial arts isn't just about kicking and punching. So, and especially traditional martial arts like ours, there is some. I even teach like some meditation classes like Qigong and Tai Chi. So a lot of those things really, yoga and a lot of the Kung Fu philosophies really share a lot of the same.
A lot of people, when you say martial arts or mixed martial arts or things like that, first thing they think of is, some of the like UCF fighting or was it Unlimited?
UFC.
Is it UFC? And things like that. But when you start talking about Tai Chi and meditation, and you're pulling everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk a little bit about when you talk about martial arts. What are we talking, like judo, or are we talking karate? Or what are we talking about that you teach? You teach different classes, or have you combined a lot of things in your own technique and style, or what's up?
No, we teach what's called Kung Fu here. And again, it can get a little more complicated than that. Kung Fu is a Chinese art, and under the Kung Fu umbrella, you have different styles of Kung Fu. So we trace our roots back to Shaolin Temple, which the Shaolin Temple is a very unique Buddhist temple that's been around for quite a few hundred years. And what made them unique is they were Buddhist warrior monks, which is almost an anomaly because, Buddhism teaches compassion and passiveness. But these warrior monks were able to take that same philosophy of compassion and passiveness and develop a sophisticated martial arts. So the overall mentality is developing yourself, and they just do it through the trials and tribulations of harsh martial arts training. So yes, to answer your question, we're a Kung Fu school, which is a Chinese art. Judo is a Japanese art. Karate is a Japanese art. So a lot of the arts can be defined by where they originated and where they're from.
Let's talk just a little bit about, let's go back, let's start with the meditation part of it, and then we'll get into the different aspects of the self-defense and the Kung Fu and things like that. Tai Chi, what is that exactly? Because I see people, the poses and the breathing.
Tai Chi actually was one of the original Shaolin arts. And again, to put it in simple terms, you can kind of divide martial arts up into external and internal training. And what I mean by external, internal is how we express our energy. So the Shaolin monks discovered early on that you didn't need to develop a lot of attributes like speed and strength and become bigger and stronger than the next guy to win. That if you understood energy and the play of energy and physics, that could really level the playing field. And so they developed using their meditation and some of their moving meditations that most people recognize in Tai Chi, they develop those into actual martial application. Now, there's a time period in Chinese history in the 20s, when the Republic of China took over, they actually, fearing an uprising from the people, the government outlawed the practice of martial arts. But to maintain the traditions, they told martial arts schools that you could still be a martial arts school, you could still practice the traditions, the exercises, but you weren't allowed to practice martial application. So to be a martial arts school in that time period and all the way up until pretty much present day, you had to register your school with the government, and the government came in and pretty much told you what you could and couldn't train, and they took the martial application out of it. So most Tai Chi schools out there today, especially in America, are really just the moving meditations. And not really a whole lot of the applications. So if you really look around for it, there are a couple schools here in America that teach some of the application, but most of the schools and my program, I just teach the moving meditations, and I reserve the martial applications for my general Kung Fu program.
When somebody calls in, first of all, let's get your phone number out there for everybody, and then what your hours are, and then we'll talk about somebody that comes in and says, "Hey, Jesse, I'm interested in this." Then we'll talk a little bit about how this all plays out. But your hours, and then also a phone number.
Our phone number is 937-423-2862, and then our hours, we're here every evening through the week from 4 to about 7, and then we maintain office hours Thursday and Friday from 10 to 7, and Saturdays from 9 to 1.
Okay. I was going to say most of your classes are evening classes then.
Yeah. We have a Saturday morning adult class, but most of our programs are in the evening through the week.
Somebody calls up and they say, "Jess, I'm interested in this." So what all is the process you go through, and then how do you get started? You take individuals, or it's always as a class? You wait till you have enough people to start a new class with the basics, or how's this all play out?
It's rolling. So if you were to call up and you were interested, we offer a week of free classes. So, I would tell you a little bit about our program. Everybody asks those questions. What kind of martial art is it, or what do you teach? I give them a little bit of details to that, but then I just encourage them to come in and try it. And again, they jump right in, even with the advanced students, because the advanced students are always, sharpening up the basics. All of our advanced material stems from the basics, and it's really hard to move on to advanced material or develop advanced concepts and principles without a solid foundation of the basics. So when we get new members, it's a great opportunity to review for the seniors, and then And then other times I will just divide the class up into, my advanced or my senior students down here, my juniors down there, and then at some point I still bring them back together. That way the seniors can also influence and make an impression on the newer students or the juniors as well. So it also helps establish kind of those, right out of the gate, those like family kind of relationships, which is, one of the things that we boast here is that we want to develop family, like a family unity here. And in fact, our titles, like my title is Sifu, which is commonly misconceived as like master, but Sifu just means like teacher, father. So like I maintain like a kind of a father figure over my students. And then my students' titles are if you were to sign up now, everybody who signed up before you would be your Sihing, which means older brother, and they would refer to you as Sidai, as younger brother. So,
well, we're going to come back in just a minute, and we're going to expand on all this, and we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of equipment, if any, you need, what kind of clothing. Then we want to talk about the different levels. And I know in karate they have different levels, and I suppose in kung fu they do or not.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're going to come back in just a little bit. Once again, you're watching Main Street Greenville as we continue our series, Our Town, here on the Wave Channel 5, Greenville Public Access TV. We'll be back in just a moment. We're here with Jesse Berry, the owner of Young Forest Martial Arts Studio on West 3rd Street on the Main Street Greenville series, as we do it here on Channel 5. We talked a little bit about some of the philosophy, and when a person first calls in, any special things? I mean, we've got different kind of clothing or shoes or anything. What equipment or apparel does a new person have to begin this series?
Really starting out, they just need some comfortable clothes to train in. I don't require uniforms until what we call first grade. So most martial arts schools have levels or ranks, or like I said, we call ours grades. So first grade takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks before we test for first grade. And then by then I like to have my students to have uniforms. So again, that kind of reinforces the school unity, but essentially they really don't need anything else. Other equipment, we do sparring here. Of course, we put gloves on and some other sparring equipment, and kind of rough each other up a little bit. But we do have equipment that students can share, and of course, students can purchase their own as they go along.
Now, age-wise, what are some of your younger students, and then it goes right on up? You could have a 95-year-old come in if they could have the dexterity and flexibility and agility, is correct?
Absolutely. Our programs, our youngest program is 3 to 5.
Wow.
And
3 to 5 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep, those are our Wii Warriors, and we have quite a little group of Wii Warriors right now. Our children's programs 7 to 12, and then our adults are 13 and up, our young adult program. And you're right, there's no age limit. At my previous school, we had a lady who was well into her 70s that trained with us for quite a few years before she kind of bowed out.
Well, what's the ideal class size for you then? I mean, we've got some space here, but 20 is too many, right?
Absolutely. We try to keep the class size down to 10 or 12. In fact, our children's program, which is our largest program right now, we recently had to divide into 2 groups because we have about 23 active students right now in that program. So just a little over 10 in each class. So we have an A group and a B group.
How many times a week do you meet then? Is it once a week they come in, or is it twice a week? And then how long do the classes or sessions last?
For the Wii Warriors, it's only a half hour because that's about the extent.
Attention span.
Their attention span. The children's program is just under an hour, and then the adult program is an hour. The children's program, since we divided that into 2 groups, now meet 2 times a week. We have a Monday and Wednesday group and a Tuesday and Thursday group. And then our adult program meets 3 times a week, or Wii Warriors meet 3 times a week. And then I have an advanced program that's kind of separate from our general program that meets 1 time a week, and a leadership program. And that program's for people who are interested in learning the art, and then of course passing it on someday. And that group meets once a week also.
Do a lot of people come in and say, Jess, I've heard about your classes, but I want some self-defense. Say somebody tries to jump me in an alleyway. Does the self-defense kind of thing enter into a person's decision to get into your Kung Fu classes then?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what martial arts is all about, of course, is self-defense. So to understand self-defense, let me start over. I do have a self-defense program. I can teach that in like a 1 or 2 hour seminar, or sometimes I do like a 6-week session, like meeting once a week. And then, of course, my general program is rolling. Now, essentially, both of those are a self-defense program, but to understand the difference is we kind of divide self-defense up into 2 categories, self-defense and combat. Combat for most people sounds a little harsh, but both goals are the same, and that's self-preservation. Self-defense is for people who don't want to spend the rest of their life learning martial arts. They want to develop a little bit of confidence, learn some techniques that's going to increase their chances of survival, and that's what our self-defense program is all about. Think of that like emergency room tactics. Somebody approaches you, and you'll know what you have a good idea of what to do. The general program, or what we call our combat program, is again, that's for people who plan on spending some time, months and months or years and years training, where we can teach them a little bit more sophisticated and more advanced techniques. So instead of trying to get away from danger, which is what we teach in the general self-defense program, higher levels of self-defense or combat is eliminating the danger. So if somebody was to approach you, you would know how to handle the situation in terms of eliminating that threat.
Now, also involved in that then, some recognition of awareness of your surroundings and situations when your senses get heightened, and maybe something in the back of your mind says, hey, I'm in a situation I don't really want to be in right now. So is that part of it also?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's really the fundamental lesson is awareness and understanding the situation, and then of course being aware of what your capabilities are, and that will help you make a better, educated and knowledgeable decision. Most people without any self-defense training or background or experience, of course, they don't know how to identify a potentially dangerous situation. And of course, when the situation happens, most people freeze up because it's like, what do you do? I mean, nobody knows what to do. So again, that exactly that awareness of, okay, this is a potentially dangerous situation. What can I do to avoid it? Okay, it's too late for that. What can I do to get to safety? Again, the self-defense program is about getting away from the danger or getting to safety. So, and that might include having to, hit or strike the other person or break free from your attacker and then getting to safety. Whereas again, the more advanced or the combat, quote unquote, combat self-defense, same thing, being aware of potentially dangerous situations, what to do when you're in a situation, and instead of the setback with getting away from the danger is a lot of times that leaves your attacker another opportunity. So, attacker grabs you, you break free, you hit him a couple times and then try to run away. Most of the time that might end the confrontation, but sometimes they will come at you again. Of course, getting to higher levels and using more advanced concepts and principles, you would put the attacker down, and then you could safely get away because they can't attack you again.
Now in Kung Fu, because I think Judo then is like throws, and I think Karate is like chops. Kung Fu is what?
Well, you're referring to different ranges. Would be a clear picture to paint. So combat and self-defense can be divided into 4 ranges. Long range, like long range kicking and striking, really reaching out for the person. Short range kicking and striking, that's where you're up a little bit closer. Trapping and throwing, that's like Judo is a good example of that, grabbing and throwing the person. And then of course like wrestling or what's commonly known as grappling. Those are the 4 ranges. So most schools usually operate in 1 or 2 of those ranges. So again, judo is a good example of trapping and throwing. Karate's a better example of short range kicking and striking. Taekwondo is another popular art. That's a long range kicking and striking. Jiu-jitsu is a very popular martial art right now, and that's usually more trapping and grappling. So one of the things that makes our school unique is we actually cover all those ranges. So if you were to go to a Taekwondo school, it would mostly be long-range kicking, whereas if you came to our school or a school like ours, you would get long-range kicking and the short-range kicking and striking and the grabbing and throwing and wrestling.
Well, we're going to come back in just a minute because I want to go through some slow motion stuff with Jesse here. Just maybe some basic things you'd teach somebody if somebody came up behind you, say, in a street or a dark alley. I just ate, so take it easy on me, too. But hey, we're going to come back in just a minute here at Young Forest Martial Arts here on West 3rd Street, and maybe just walk through a couple of real simple procedures somebody might be able to, use at home or when you're out in public and something happens, a situation you don't want to be in. We'll be back in just a moment. Jesse, let's talk a little bit and maybe just slow motion again. I'm an old man and I just ate lunch. I come up behind you and let's kind of walk through in slow motion some things a person could do to get out of a hold or something like that. And we'll just say I come up and I'm behind you like this and I do one of these numbers and I'm saying, your money or your life, something like that. So what do you do? What's some things you can do?
Well, I'll just kind of go through it,
okay,
and then I'll talk through the next one.
Okay.
So, of course, a rear, what we call a rear choke, is very difficult to get out of. A lot of schools will talk to you about trying to peel the arm, but the person's big and strong, and they really cinch it in. You really don't have the leverage. So, the first thing I do is slip out here, strike the groin, and then from here you can slide the arm back, and then I'll step out and kind of. From here, you slide the arm back behind your leg, as I just demonstrated, hand around the face, and then you dump them right over your own knee. And of course, at that point, they're on their back. You're on top for either to run away to safety or to eliminate that danger.
Yeah, to eliminate that danger. Okay, so that's a great move. So let's show that again, just kind of slow motion. I've come up, I've grabbed him from behind. So you've got my arm, and you're going to duck down.
I'm going to pull out here. So now, right now, I've, even though you still kind of have a choke on me, I immediately seize a better position.
You're dropping that inside shoulder.
So having my hips behind yours, and now I'm practically behind you, or really I'm more behind you. So even though you have a hard hold here, choking me, I have way more leverage in terms of position. Okay. Of course, I have the groin.
The shot to the groin, which will put most men down.
Yeah, which would put most men down. As you can feel right here, pushing up against that nose, right there is going to easily push your head back, and that's going to also take some leverage away from you. And I won't really knock you down, but you can kind of feel how easy it is to bend you over.
Yeah.
It'd be very hard for you to not fall down on your own at this point. And then again, I have my leg right behind you, so
as a fulcrum to flip them.
I'm basically attacking you on 3 levels: high, over the knee, and then of course low. And then you don't have to just lay the person down. You can actually scoop this leg up and dump them, really dump them on their head. So again, if we're talking about a self-defense situation where we're out in the street somewhere, the hitting the ground is not going to be very comfortable for them either. Right. You can also however you want to do that. You can also, as you're falling down, seize this arm as a person hits the ground. There's what we call a standing arm lock or arm bar, where you're on the ground and I'm pulling your arm over. I have my knee pinned against your body so I can pull the arm back.
Pretty painful.
Yeah, I mean, there's several things that can happen, which is, of course, you want to be aware of the different variations. It's easy to paint this perfect picture of what would actually, what you would want to do versus
And that comes with the training. So in a self-defense class, like you say, kind of a basic thing, that's like even a 2-hour seminar to give some of these basic moves, and then it's just practice, so it's more of a reaction instead of thinking, well, I do this, I do that. It's just boom.
Right. So in our self-defense program, that would actually be a little bit on the advanced side for a self-defense program, especially if I was just doing a 2-hour, a seminar. Seminars are really more like a sample course. I mean, this is, and of course the people are participating, I show them how to punch correctly and kick correctly, and I do take them through some of the exercises so they can have that experience, and they can still develop some of the awareness in terms of, we talk about potential threatening situations and how to avoid them. So you can definitely gain a lot from a 2-hour seminar, but to really develop skills, I mean, you really have to do at least the 6-week course. And then again, even that 6-week course, we spend more time on just the basics and the fundamentals than we do some of the more advanced stuff like that.
Let me ask you 2 things. One thing you always hear, if somebody grabs you, another way, if somebody grabs you from behind, is to take your shoe and go down the front of their shin and step on their foot. Is that something that could be used?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, personally, I think anything could be used. Obviously, you have to use what you got. Like I said, a lot of schools will teach you to try to pry that arm off, gouge the eyes. Sometimes you got to do whatever. Again, and that's one of the things I like to teach my students is, you don't want to get caught up in, okay, what do I do now? I mean, you want to just whatever happens. Part of the training and the drilling is to train your body to react, a better way than it normally would. But at the end of the day, if somebody chokes me from behind and I don't do the quote-unquote correct way, and I just reach up and gouge their eyes and they let go, or I panic and just start stomping their feet and they let go, then which way was, you asked that rhetorical question, did I protect myself? Did I save myself? So,
or did you just make them angry?
Yeah, did I? Well, exactly. So again, but that's kind of where we start bridging from a basic self-defense philosophy to combat. Again, when we talk about basic self-defense and getting away from danger, like I said earlier, that kind of still leaves them an opportunity to come back. So, did you make them angry?
So if you have that advantage, you want to put them away then, right?
Yeah. Again, the highest levels of self-defense is what most people consider combat, and that's eliminating the danger. So if you eliminate the danger, which can mean a lot of things, then they're not going to come back at you again.
You just did that one move where you had the person, we were showing it here, where you had the person down on their back, and you say strike with blows. Is that, in Kung Fu, is that like a flat hand, or is that with knuckles or fingers? And do you go for like an Adam's apple or something? Because that would really put them away.
Again, at higher levels, we do start talking about pressure points and throat strikes and things like that. But at the early levels and at the basic levels, and of course our self-defense, our basic self-defense programs, it's just fists. And then of course we do have palm strikes, but we focus our palm strikes. Not a lot of schools do a good flat-handed palm strike. We actually, there's a hard bone. This is actually a harder bone than your knuckles, and it's more in line with your wrists. So we develop what we call a striking point. That way I can either hit somebody with that striking point, or even if I grab them, like if I go to grab somebody's head, I train myself to hit that, drag that striking point right across. Again, a good striking point is the collarbone because it breaks real easy. So just grabbing somebody's head, I could potentially, or a practitioner could potentially break a collarbone, which would really shut the person down.
Most of you folks out there know I'm a chiropractor, and you're talking about the pisiform bone, which is that hard bone right there on the outside of your palm, basically. And that's also a contact point for chiropractic techniques. And that if you've got the right leverage and the right angle, you can do some serious damage with that.
Absolutely. And we definitely at our higher levels, we definitely develop that. And if you train with somebody who has again, we call that a striking point. If you train with somebody who has a striking point technology, or if you spar around with them or compete with them, you definitely know it, because every time they touch you or grab you, even though it might not necessarily be a quote-unquote strike, just grabbing you, you can feel it's like getting hit at the same time.
I know my dad always used to get my attention when I was a little kid just by squeezing across these trapezius muscles around that collarbone, or even grabbing an ear, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, again, any like I said earlier, and like I always tell my students, you don't want to get trapped into, I have to hit him there, or have to hit him here, or I have to grab him there. I mean, we're talking about potentially life and death situation. You hit them and grab them, or squeeze them, or pinch them any way you need to.
And when you practice, especially with your advanced classes, then you have pads and so forth on, correct?
Yeah. We have traditional sparring gear on. We have the headgear, and we have different kinds of gloves depending on what we're working on, and we have some foot pads also. So.
Very good. We're going to stop just a second. We're going to go around on the other side of the space here on West 3rd Street. And Jesse also has other things that kind of tie in with the martial arts. And we'll be back in just a minute here as you watch the Main Street Greenville show on the Wave Channel 5. Jesse, you have other things that kind of tie in with the martial arts, and I know you've given lectures and done different things, especially up, I know, at the library, and you've given talks to Rotary Club. Let's talk about some of the things you have back here. It looks like different teas and different things. How's that blend in with your business?
Well, incidentally, tea and like other cultures, especially like the Chinese culture, is more than just drinking tea. In fact, they've developed it into its own, like quote unquote art. You could even go on to become a tea master. So there's tea ceremonies. The different cultures, the different like Chinese culture and Japanese culture have their own tea ceremonies that can range anywhere from kind of casual to very elaborate. In fact, I'm studying the Japanese tea ceremony now, and that can. A full Japanese tea ceremony could be hours and hours. And it's very sophisticated because a lot of it is very scripted, and there's, it takes a lot of focus and concentration. So
Well, let's take a look, and Nick will get shots of this. Here you have a teapot. It says, please ask for assistance, so I will. So why don't you come over this way and just tell us a little bit about this. Maybe pull that out, and let's see what we have here. We'll start with the hardware, and then we'll talk about some of the different teas and different things you have this way.
Well, this is kind of a mixed match set here. This pot and this cup is more of a Japanese design. And not in tune with the traditional Japanese ceremony. The traditional Japanese ceremony, they actually take a powdered tea. It comes from the same tea plant, the same tea tree. They grind it into a powder, and then they whisk it in a bowl to like a froth. But when they're not drinking powdered tea, they drink tea like the rest of the world, loose leaf. And this is kind of a Japanese style pot. So you'd put... You'd actually fill about 1/3 of that with tea, and then you'd dump just a little bit of water, hot water in there, and you'd only let it steep for a few seconds. Then you dump it into your cup, and then you have a fresh cup every time. So every time you want a cup of tea, you would just pour more water into your pot.
I noticed that the cups don't have handles. Is that the Chinese, Japanese influence, though, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely. The Chinese tea ceremony is quite a bit different than the Japanese ceremony, and I don't have any actual Chinese teapots on display, but they're actually much smaller. So one of my pots is probably about that big around. It only holds about 2 or 3 ounces of water. Wow. And the cups are about that big around and about that tall. I mean, it barely makes a half a mouthful. And as part of the Chan influence or the Buddhist influence of moderation, you would drink that in 3 drinks or more. So, unlike our culture where we just like to shotgun everything down, you actually would have your little tiny cup of tea and you would sip it down in 3 cups. So again, you can kind of see like the discipline and
So a lot of that's then more part of the tradition and the ceremony than it is actually quenching your thirst. It seems like where we, like you say, shotgun it down, whether it's iced tea and, oh my gosh, you probably don't have iced tea in any of this, do you? It's all steaming hot tea.
It's all traditionally pretty hot. And but there's a lot more appreciation. I mean, teas are very much like fine wines. So again, there's definitely part of the reason why you sip it down is to help promote the appreciation of the tea. Of course, you can shotgun the drink down, but to really put a little sip in your mouth and savor it, again, sort of like wine, wine tasting, they don't just shotgun their drink down. A lot of times they put it in the mouth.
Well, you've got different teas here. Let's talk a little bit about different teas because, I hate to say it, but a lot of people out there, they get a Nestle's tea bag or something like that. They dip it in some lukewarm water and they think, boy, that's great tea. Not even close, right? Steaming hot water is one key to bringing out the full flavor of a tea, right?
Correct. And in fact, not necessarily steaming hot because the different temperatures will give you kind of a different brew. Okay. So slightly lower temperatures, say 160 degrees, will give you a little bit milder brew than say 200 degrees.
Okay. Well, let's take a look. Like here, I'm going to pull one out. We got all sorts of them here. Let's start with the black tea. Golden Monkey black tea. Let's talk a little bit about that particular tea. Black tea.
All tea, when you're talking about green tea and oolong tea and black tea, they all come from the same plant. So essentially how they produce loose leaf green tea is they pick the tea, at least artisan teas, they hand pick the leaves, picking the fullest and the best leaves, and then they want to do what's called a firing right away. Basically, they put the leaves in a giant wok over a flame, and they'll heat it up. And sometimes they'll roll it, sometimes they'll just press it flat. They usually heat it up a series of times. Sometimes they'll steam in between. So there's quite a few variations to that part of the process, and that's how you get different kinds of green tea. Okay. Black tea, essentially what they do is they pick the leaves, but they leave them set out for up to 2 days and allow the leaves to wilt. And when a leaf wilts, it actually releases a resin, and that's what turns the leaf brown and or black. And then the firing process is what prevents the leaf from oxidizing anymore. So that's why green leaves, after they fire them, you can leave them on an open shelf for literally years, and some of the color might fade, but it won't wilt away like it would if it just fell to the ground.
Well, then the green tea, they don't go through that 2-day process?
No. Nope, they pick it and they fire it right away. They want to maintain the green freshness of the leaf. And again, some of them are Dragonwell here. If you were to look at Dragonwell, they take the leaves, they'll roll them around and dry fire them, but then they press them real flat. So the leaves are kind of long and pressed flat, look like somebody put them in a book, like you press a leaf or something in a book.
Okay. And then what's the oolong tea?
Oolong is actually in between, can be anywhere in between green and black. So oolongs, instead of left out for 2 days, it would be left out for a day or part of a day. And again, there's no hard, fast rule. So our jade oolong is really closer to a green tea. And then we have another oolong. One bush is really closer to a black tea. It's a dark oolong. So again...
Well, if somebody goes in, they buy the little tea bags that you see at the stores, and I know there's all sorts of varieties and everything, but these are crushed like you find in a tea bag too. These are whole leaf.
These are full leaves, and some of them, depending on the tea leaves, actually come from the plant as a tree, but a lot of farmers will cultivate it into a bush so that their pickers can pick from it. Sometimes they still grow as a tree, and they'll just get up on a ladder. So yeah, these are full leaves, and the leaves really mature. Full leaf can be up to a palm size long, but some teas, just to get a kind of a different flavor out of it, they'll cultivate it to smaller leaves. So again, there's so many variations. It looks like I have a large selection here, but this is really a fraction of what's out there.
Okay. Somebody comes in, a real tea connoisseur, that said, "Hey Jesse, you got a good selection, but can you order this in? Can you do that? Order different teas?"
Absolutely. In fact, I just started carrying a new tea I don't have up here yet because we just started carrying it. I have one of my when you sell artisan products like this, even artisan teas, you actually kind of develop a clientele versus just having random customers. And one of my more consistent customers has requested a tea, so we started carrying it just for their benefit.
Now, most teas are cultivated where?
They're really cultivated everywhere. So there's actually tea
like India, Asia. I always think of India, Asia, China, Southeast Asia.
Those are where the best teas come from. Okay. Like I said, there's estates here in America, but most of the tea trees grow naturally on like rocky, kind of hilly mountainside, and of course, different elevations create a different kind of tea, a different brew, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the best teas still come from China and Japan.
I did not know that there are commercial teas grown here in the States.
Mm-hmm. There's some, I think Lipton, and don't quote me on this, but I think Lipton still has some tea. Wow. Some tea producing areas in the Carolinas, one of the Carolina states. But Lipton, some of those companies, like you go to a store and buy a bag of tea, like you said, it's all broken up. Mm-hmm. Most of those companies don't hand pick their leaves. They have like kind of a rake, and it goes through kind of instead of dry firing it, where an artisan can actually really focus on getting the right temperature and heating. They run it through an oven and things like that. So.
Yeah, when it's hand-picked, then it's a lot higher quality flavor and tea that comes out of there. So people come in, we have the teas they can choose from, different sets that you can get as far as the pots and the cups and things of that nature. Now, I also noticed you had just a couple other things over here. We'll kind of take a look at this, organic food bars and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'm also a health food fanatic. I'm also a vegan as well, so I don't really preach or promote vegan.
There's no Chinese beef jerky here?
No. I don't necessarily preach or teach veganism directly to my students unless somebody approaches me on the subject. But again, as a health food fanatic, I like to provide my students and customers with healthy alternatives. So these are raw, organic food, like power bars. We do proteins and supplements like that also. So.
Is this something you mix with water, or?
Yeah, it's a protein shake. So these are individual packs or individual servings, and then of course this is your full. It comes with a scoop, so one scoop per powder.
Now, you go out and promote a lot of this then when you give different talks around, because I know you're going out and giving talks and so forth, is not only in conjunction with your martial arts, then you say, hey, this is all available. These are things that we really promote for healthy lifestyle.
I haven't so much since I've started this school. Training at my previous school, I trained at a school in Richmond, and I definitely given some health seminars and some lectures. Mm-hmm. And my school didn't carry these kind of products, but I definitely listed examples of good healthy alternatives and companies. The great thing about a lot of these companies is they're also very environmentally conscious. Mm-hmm. And so not only are you getting a healthy alternative, but you're giving your money to a company that cares about a bigger picture.
One last thing, and then we're going to wrap things up here. You yourself, you're in great shape, that's obvious. But do you do other things? Do you do weight training, or do you do stretching, yoga, anything like that? I mean, right here beside the yoga studio. So do you recommend most of your people not only do the kung fu and healthy eating habits, but also any weight training, running, jogging, anything along that line?
I do a little bit of running off and on. I've always maintained my own conditioning regimen. that I learned and developed at my school. I was active competing there for a while, and we conditioned pretty extensively. So I still do that. I have a separate program, which is a sparring program, and in that program, in my general class, we always do a warm-up, some basic push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, some stretches and things like that. And then in our sparring program, our competition program, we actually work out a little bit harder. Not that I expect my students to get in great shape by coming to 1 or 2 classes a week, but the idea is not that I teach them these exercises or even these techniques and then they master them here in this class. This is stuff that they learn and then, of course, practice on their own. But yeah, I still maintain a certain level of conditioning. It could range. It can include anything. I like to mix things up. And of course, I don't do yoga, but I do practice Tai Chi, Qigong, which I teach a course on that as well.
Very good. Well, I'll tell you what, this is Jesse Berry from here at Young Forest Martial Arts on West 3rd Street. It's right beside Elements up here. And well, I tell you what, a lot of stuff that people don't know that you do in here, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time because you've given us some good basic information that hopefully you people out there, if you have interest in it, stop up and see Jesse here. Your phone number again?
937-423-2862.
423-2862. Get in here if you have any interest. And hey, thanks a lot for your time. And this wraps up another show here on Main Street, Greenville, as we bring you those things that make Greenville, Ohio, our town. On behalf of Nick Schmidt, my videographer, I'm Alex Warner. We'll see you again here with our next episode as we take a look at other stores and businesses that make up the downtown Greenville area.